Hi, I'm Carolyn Evans-Hammond and welcome to my tasting room. Carolyn's tasting room is where you can taste exciting wines with me, and this week we enjoy a flight that takes you straight to Italy. And the wines are the Gran Passione Extra Dry Prosecco DOC from the Veneto, the 2019 Castello de Neive Barbaresco DOCG from Piedmont, Italy, the 2018 Zenato Amarone della Valpolicella Classico DOCG from the Veneto, and the non-vintage Oggi Moscato Frizzante IGT, also from the Veneto. So let's taste. So the first wine in our flight is a white Prosecco. Now Prosecco is wildly popular everywhere because the quality has never been better, and this is a one I really like. It's called Gran Passione, and it celebrates, the Italian lifestyle. It's all about pleasure and food and wine. So pour yourself a glass and let's taste. In the glass, you'll immediately notice the persistent bubbles going up, threading the middle of the glass. It's a bubbly, it's an Italian bubbly, it's tank method, it's easy. This is not an expensive wine. It sells for around $15 in the US and, around $16 in Canada. So you can quaff it and let's see what it tastes like. So pour yourself a glass. Notice immediately just how clear and bright it is. It's absolutely sunlit, very pretty, very clear and very bright. When it's clear, it suggests stability. You want your wine to look like that. So have a nose. Beautiful. Aromatic, fruit forward, sliced pear, bit of, floral notes there, as well as some interesting minerality. Do you notice that? Sort of some stoniness. I like that. So there's some complexity on the nose, which is nice. It's very inviting, and have a sip. Streams in, effervescent, crisp, quenching, and not too dry. Now this is called extra dry. Extra dry means the wine has between 12 grams and 17 grams per liter of residual sugar. This one has 14, so you know that it just has a whisper of sweetness, just enough to make it, a nice cocktail style wine. It's a kind of wine you can enjoy on its own or with, cicchetti, that Venetian bar snack, which can be anything from, crostini to olives. So have a sip. We'll focus just on the tip of the tongue to see if we can detect that sweetness there. Get that? When you just take a sip, you don't notice it, but you notice it when you focus just on the tip of the tongue, and there is that kiss of sweetness. Very enchanting, really. It's nice. Have another sip. Focus on the sides of the palate to see if we can detect the acidity, because there needs to always be perfect tension between acidity and sweetness, just like a great glass of lemonade. That sweet sour makes it quenching and refreshing. So have a sip, let it wash to the sides of the palate, and see what happens. Lots of acidity there that you don't notice if you're just sipping. Beautiful tension, creates, structure, and it's exactly what you want in a glass of Prosecco. There's also no alcoholic heat on the back of the palate. This is a light wine at just 11% alcohol, and the fruit is cloaking that beautifully. So have another sip. We'll see if everything's echoing on the palate that we found on the nose. Sliced pear, you get that? I'm getting a hint of apricot, maybe some white peach puree or something like that. And on the finish is where you pick up the minerality. I love that. So this is an easy pour, and it's a kind of wine that starts out an evening beautifully. And now we head north to Piemonte. Piemonte is, that region responsible for some great reds, Barolo and Barbaresco. This wine is a Barbaresco, and it's pure Nebbiolo It's age-worthy. It's a kind of wine you can lay down. It's from a marvelous vintage, and it's very affordable for a fine wine. It costs about $35 in the US and about $45 in Canada, which I think is a bit of a steal. So pour yourself a glass and let's explore. So in the glass, what I love is, notice the color. Isn't that great? Now it's almost transparent. Nebbiolo is actually a wine that has power, yet also finesse. It's not a wine that's ever very dark. And you can see that. You can see your thumb right through it. So you don't usually get really dark wines, but don't let that fool you. This is a big, bold wine. I believe it's, yes, 14.5% alcohol. So we're talking about a full-bodied wine. So very shiny, very bright, sort of ruby inflections, very pretty in the glass. Give it a swirl and let's nose it. Isn't that incredible? This is enchanting. This is the kind of nose you want to spend some time with. Violet, yes, classic. Tar, hint of tar, that earthy tar. Roses, classic Nebbiolo is tar and roses, but dried roses here. Red peppercorn crushed. Earth, cherries. Lots going on. You can go on and on. But the aromas are not forward. They're very elusive. They're shifting. They're restrained. And they're yet sort of heady in that calm, gentle way. I really like this, as you can tell. I hope you like it too. So have a sip. What we're going to do is just let it wash in and experience it before we get technical. Wow. Isn't that marvelous? This is the kind of wine, like I said, it's 14.5% alcohol, but you would never know it. It's so beautifully balanced, and it's suave. It's charming. It's like art in a glass. So have a sip. Focus on the tip of the tongue, and let's get technical. Let's see if it's dry or sweet. 2 grams per liter of residual sugar is in this, bone dry, and you know that when you sip it. Have another sip. Focus on the sides of the palate. Now we know Nebbiolo is a high acid grape, but there was none of that acidity showing through when we just sipped it, remember? So have a sip now, focus on the sides of the palate, and let's see if that acidity is true to form. Lots of acidity there. There's also a lot of tannin. Do you notice that? The tannin lends structure. They're not too grippy, but they're there. They're present. They're holding the fruit in place, and you can feel it around the sides of your gums, and you can also feel it on the finish. It holds the fruit in place for a long, long time. It's a very long wine. Have another sip. Let's see how the fruit is expressing itself. There's so much going on. Where do you even start? You can name them all if you want. Dried roses, yes. Raspberry, yes. Cranberry, earthy, like freshly turned earth, but subtle, almost dusty cherries. I'm getting a hint of tobacco too. I'm getting even a hint of white truffle on the finish. Do you pick that up? There's some red meat, there's some grill marks. Lots going on, so much going on. And now it's all pink peppercorn. So the thing with this wine is it hangs together beautifully. It's got concentration, though you'd never know it because, it doesn't go in boldly. But you know it's concentrated because none of that 14.5% alcohol is showing through. There's lots of complexity, and it's long, very long. It's still there. So that's, concentration, complexity, and length, hallmarks of quality wine. It's a fabulous wine, impressive for sure, great value for money, and now I want wild mushroom risotto with truffle. And the third wine in our flight is an Amarone. Now, Amarone is a very special wine. It's pricey to produce and relatively pricey to buy. This wine is good value at $65 in the US and about $55 in Canada. And I think you'll see why. So pour yourself a glass and you'll immediately notice a depth of color, as well as if you swirl it, you'll notice the legs. You know, the way the wine drapes down the inside of the glass creates legs. Those legs are very evident. That's a testament to higher alcohol. This has 16.5% alcohol because indeed it's made from dried fruit. The fruit was dried for about 4 months and then the wine was aged 36 months in Slovenian oak barrels. So, and then it was aged further in bottle before release. So this is a special wine. So give it a swirl and let's have a sniff. Lots going on. Now it's not forward, which is interesting. You kind of have to coax those aromas up, but there's lots to offer. Coffee and cherry, cassis, maybe orange peel and dark melting chocolate. Maybe cocoa powder too, that sort of powdery scent. Lots going on, fig and plum, but dried plum. So you could go on, and that's another thing about Amarone. It's a kind of wine you can pour, by the fire and talk about, ponder. Anyway, so have a sip. Let's focus on the tip of the tongue to see whether it's dry or sweet, because this is another important point. Do you notice that? This is not a bone dry wine. This wine has 8 grams per liter of residual sugar, which is enough to soften the edges and make it seem round. So there's an element here that creates a real drinkability. Now have another sip, focus on the sides of the palate. We know that the fruit that goes into Amarone has, quite high levels of acidity. So we should be able to notice great balancing acidity when we focus on the sides of the palate. Notice that? Mouth-watering. And that mouth-watering acidity balances the sweetness and creates a wonderful quenching drinkability. I love that. Have another sip and we'll see how the fruit cascades or fans out or unfurls with complexity. That's fun because it also, makes you think about what you'd like to pair with it. Dried plum, chocolate, maybe a hint of, chocolate covered espresso bean. And it goes on and on. You can go on. There's dried fig. There's a little bit of toastiness. There's some nuts. I think maybe chestnut even and hazelnut. And it's long. It's still very prominent and it goes on and on and on. So this is a wine that's concentrated, complex, and long. It's a powerhouse that's fabulous after a day of skiing in the Alps. And the last one in our flight is a Moscato Frizzante. The thing about this wine is it's sweet, which is why it's last in our flight. A sweet wine ends a meal fabulously, especially with a little bit of cheese. And you can do something else with this wine. You can freeze it. It makes a fabulous granita. So pour yourself a glass and let's look at it. In the glass, you'll notice there's a little bit of bubbles. Can you see that? And that's because this is Frizzante, which means lightly sparkling. It's also clear and bright and sunlit, which you'd expect. And on the nose, wildly aromatic. Tropical. Do you notice that? Like pineapple and mango and papaya, as well as a drizzle of honey. Have a sip. It washes in. It's not wildly concentrated, but it is fresh. It's round. It's quenching. It's got lots of acidity and lots of sugar. So have a sip, focus on the tip of the tongue to see what we're talking about. Do you notice that? When you do that, you realize it's a very sweet wine. But Have another sip, focus on the sides of the palate, and see why all of that sugar works. As you let the wine wash down the sides of the palate, your mouth waters. And that's because this is incredibly high in acid. And that tension or balance between the sugar and the acid just makes it work. It makes it incredibly drinkable, incredibly quenching, and your palate is left scraped clean. This is the kind of wine that's marvelous with all sorts of desserts. I really like it with cheesecake, like a plain New York cheesecake. I also like it with burrata, if you want a cocktail style. So lots of versatility. It's a nice after dinner wine, and it's a great little thing to know about. So there you have it, 4 delicious wines from Italy. Did you enjoy the trip? Isn't it wonderful that you can travel vicariously through wine? Let me know in the comments below what wine you liked best, and then meet me next time here on Carolyn's Tasting Room so you can drink better and learn how.